The following segments are pre-recorded and sponsored by Longworth Productions.
A report from Congress on Triad Today. Hello everyone, I'm Jim Longworth and welcome to a special voter education edition of Triad Today. Over the next half hour we'll be speaking with Congressperson Kathy Manning, and we'll talk about all sorts of issues that affect all of us. We'll get to that in a second. But first, a few remarks from our good friend Todd Hall, CEO and president of Triad Federal Credit Union, who's helping to make this show possible.
In this heightened political climate, it's especially important to find resources that separate the noise from the news. A resource that focuses on what's going on in our government and how current and proposed initiatives might impact our community. That's why Triad Federal Credit Union supports Triad Today and its commitment to voter education. I'm Todd Hall, President and CEO of Triad, and we hope you enjoy this special report from Congress.
Thanks, Todd. And now we turn to our good friend who's been here many times before, Congressperson Kathy Manning, representing the 6th District over the last 2 terms. Good to see you.
Nice to be back.
Let's start with, just so that, some people might be confused. Well, yeah, I like Kathy. She's my congressperson. Well, not for long. So let's just briefly go back over why you decided not to run again.
So as hopefully people know, the Republican-controlled General Assembly redrew the maps that set the districts for the congressional seats in the state of North Carolina. And they did it in a way that makes it impossible for me to win the seat, the district I've been representing. They divided Guilford County and the current 6th District into 3 different pieces. Each piece was attached to far-flung rural areas, giving a Republican a 15 to 16 point advantage.
Right, which is just amazing because the registered Republicans and registered Democrats and registered unaffiliates are all just about equal. Democrats have the edge. So you'd think, well, this last not a court order, but there was a special masters that put together the last, it ends up in a 7-7 split, Democrat and Republican, which was very fair. And now it's just out of whack. We could have 11 Republicans and 3 Democrats.
You're exactly right. North Carolina is a true purple state. There are actually more registered Democrats than Republicans. So when the maps were drawn by a special master last term, we ended up with pretty fair elections that resulted in 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans in the House of Representatives. The way the Republicans have redrawn these maps with surgical precision, they have split up Democrats so that it is likely that we will have, out of our 14 representatives, 10 Republicans, potentially 11.
Maybe 11.
And only 3 or 4 Democrats.
All right. On a positive note, let's talk about some things you've been working on. Over the years, you've worked on a number of bills that impact our health. What about lowering the cost of health care? You've been a big proponent of that.
We've worked really hard on health care issues. We've worked to reduce health care premiums. We've worked to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. And in fact, with the Inflation Reduction Act, that was passed in this Congress, we reduced the cost of premiums. We reduced the cost of, for example, insulin is now $35 a month. The government is negotiating on the most expensive 10 prescription drugs with pharmaceutical companies, and that's been a huge advantage. I introduced a bill to reduce the cost of prescription drugs for everyone to $250 a month or $500 a month for a family. There's a companion bill in the Senate. We're hoping we can get that one passed, although with the current leadership, it seems unlikely.
Right.
We've also focused on reducing maternal mortality with a bill that would extend coverage for women who've given birth to the full postpartum year. And we have worked to address the mental health crisis in this country. We've introduced a bill that would integrate mental health education and resources into the healthcare policies in our K through 12 schools.
Yeah, it's so important there because unfortunately when we see these mass school shootings and things like that, somehow it all seems to circle back to somebody who was either young or in that school or has been in that school and has mental health problems. And so maybe your way.
We've also brought in some funding for violence prevention programs that have a mental health piece to it, and we've been able to bring in some funding for those programs as well.
Right. I'm going to cover a lot of things, as many as we can. You've done so many things for the district and so many bills that you've worked on too. We'll do that as we move forward in the program, but we'll take a quick break and come back. We'll be right back.
Banking is like going for a swim. You don't need all the complicated stuff, but you don't want to feel exposed either. At Truliant, we give you just what you need, so you can manage your money on the go or stop by a branch whenever you need to. It's all about having options, while also keeping life simple, with low rates, free financial advice, and friendly faces. So check out Truliant. We have just what you need.
The world's brightest are Fulbrights, Goldwaters, McNairs, and Spartans. Prestigious doesn't have to be expensive. UNCG. Find your way here.
Back now on Triad Today, our special guest, Kathy Manning, to keep us up to date on what's going on in Washington and Congress and various pieces of legislation. Last year, you were named chair of the new task force on workforce development. So let's talk about that for a little bit. What are the goals of that task force?
Well, we know we have a workforce shortage in this country, frankly, in all industries. So the goal of the task force is to do an assessment of what the cause of our workforce shortage is and what we can do to address it, to make sure that we have people to fill those good jobs out there that are going unfilled. We have brought in different segments of the economy, from healthcare workers to construction workers to education workers, and tried to understand, why don't we have enough workers? The other thing that we've done is we've focused on how we can get funding out there for more apprenticeship programs, career and technical training programs, community colleges, because we know that most kids won't go to college, but they need more than a high school education to fill those good jobs out there where they can earn a good salary and build a good career for themselves.
Yeah, and just as a sidebar, it was just in the paper, I guess, a couple of days ago that even the medium range private universities, it can go up to $90,000 a year to go there. I mean, it's like a different universe we're living in.
It is stunning. I read that same article. Now, it did say that the average student doesn't pay more than $13,000. So there's lots of scholarship money out there. Loans and scholarships. We did a small increase to Pell Grants in this term. I would have preferred if we had doubled Pell Grants. And of course, we want Pell Grants to be available for short-term programs so that students who are in apprenticeship programs or a community college, or who just take programs to go back and do some continuing education to get better jobs, can use Pell Grants for those educational opportunities.
All right, speaking of education, let's broadly speak about the internet for just a couple minutes. Last time you were here, we talked about the Affordable Connectivity Program. Remind folks what that is.
So the Affordable Connectivity Program is a program that gives a discount to families that qualify because it is expensive to connect to the internet. And we learned during COVID the disadvantage that a family, a student, people who are running small businesses have if they can't connect to the internet. We have 78,000 people in the 6th district who qualify for that program. It's about a $30 a month discount. And we are thrilled that we are able to help our people take advantage of that program, because the goal of this administration is to make sure that everybody from coast to coast can access the internet.
Well, but now correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't I read the other day that because of politics and partisan politics going on in Washington, that this whole program could be at risk?
The program is at risk. And I will say, the Republicans do not think it's appropriate to use funding for that particular program. I disagree.
What about and we've talked about this issue before, but, broadcasters, radio, TV, we're pretty closely regulated. In other words, I can't just stand up and take my clothes off and run in front of the, which would be unpleasant for everybody, let me just say as a side note. But, that we can't say certain curse words and things, And here, the internet, there's all this stuff out there. And kids are ending up, getting bullied online, and some are committing suicide, and it's just so many, it's just fraught with problems. Don't you think it's time for Congress to get with the FCC and let's closely regulate the internet?
I think it is critically important that we do more to understand how the internet, how different things are spread on the internet, and to get control of what's going on out there. I think there are two components to it. Number one, we need to educate consumers of media, of social media. We need parents to understand what's going on. We need students to understand what's going on. We need to learn to be discerning consumers of what's on the internet. If something is too ridiculous to be true, it usually is. So that's on us to make sure that we understand how our kids and our family members are consuming what's out there on social media. But in addition to that, we need to be pushing the online platforms, those companies that control what they produce, what they can show on their platform, to do more. There is too much damage being done on the internet, and we need to understand where it's coming from. Some of it is coming from other countries.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to control that.
And yet parents at a recent congressional hearing were blaming the suicide, blaming the things and the bullying on the internet. But very quickly, you're a parent. Don't the parents have to take responsibility for monitoring this stuff?
I think the parents do need to take responsibility. I do understand that there is a lot of pressure on parents. If your child is the only one in their class that doesn't have a phone and can't access the internet, there's a lot of shaming of that student. It needs to be a community effort. We need to really talk about when should you not use cell phones. You know, should you have times during the day where people don't have access to their cell phones?
Right.
That takes a community effort because it takes a lot of self-control.
Right. We'll pick back up in just a minute. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Jim Longworth, reminding you that Triad Today is now streaming on WFMY Plus, available free on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Back now in this special voter education edition of Triad Today with our special guest, Kathy Manning, who has been our representative in the 6th District for 2 terms now. Before we pick back up, I want to talk about some racism, immigration, some other themes as we get to them, but let's circle back for just a second, because I forgot to ask you about the work you've done on women's reproductive rights.
We have some real issues that we are facing as a country because of the overruling of the Roe versus Wade decision in the Dobbs case. We have a new rolling back of women's reproductive rights all across the country. And we are seeing women who no longer can get an abortion in some states after 6 weeks, when most women don't even know they're pregnant. Here in North Carolina, after 12 weeks. And people need to understand there are many genetic tests that cannot be detected before 12 weeks, many fetal abnormalities and health risks to a fetus and a mother that cannot be detected before that time. But this is not just impacting women who seek an abortion. This is impacting the way women who have miscarriages can be treated. It's potentially criminalizing doctors. There now have been efforts to ban IVF, and there are efforts across the country to restrict a woman's access to birth control.
Oh, absolutely.
My big bill last Congress was to make a federal right for women to access the full range of FDA-approved birth control. It passed the House last session, did not pass the Senate, and I just want to make it known, every North Carolina Republican in the House of Representatives voted against a woman's right to use the full range of FDA-approved birth control. That is a serious issue. We should all be concerned about the rolling back of women's reproductive rights.
Absolutely. Let's shift to foreign affairs for a second. The conflict in Israel on Gaza is a lot of misinformation out there, but it's also given rise to a lot of anti-Semitism. And I think you were on a task force or led a task force to try to deal with anti-Semitism. How's that going?
I chair the House Bipartisan Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism. And before the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, before that date, anti-Semitism had risen dramatically. Since October 7th, anti-Semitism has just exploded around the country. We've seen it on college campuses where the pro-Hamas protests are inexplicable. And we've seen Jewish students on college campus being harassed, being spat upon, being punched. We've seen students unable to get into their classrooms. We've seen students who are afraid to leave their dorms or unable to participate in the full range of academic experience. We've seen attacks on synagogues. We've seen attacks on people who are Jewish or perceived to be Jewish walking through the streets. This is a huge problem, and the reason we should be concerned is that what starts with anti-Semitism never ends with anti-Semitism. We saw it in the Holocaust. We have seen it elsewhere. So the attack on Jews eats at the fundamental protections of our democracy, and we should all be concerned about it.
In about 30 seconds or so, tell me what in the world we can do about the border, the southern border. People are saying, well, Biden's not doing enough. Congress isn't doing enough. What are we doing?
We had a bill that was negotiated with one of the most conservative members of the Senate that was agreed to, that was supposed to be brought to the House. And because Donald Trump told everybody, don't even look at that bill because he doesn't want to solve the border problem. He wants to run on it in the next election. So that bill would have done an enormous amount to improve the situation at the border. I am one of the original co-sponsors of a bill called the Dignity Act. It's the first bipartisan comprehensive immigration bill that's been introduced in more than 10 years. And it has some things in it that I don't love so much, but it's got a lot of really great things in there that would help us, help the DACA students, help us get more legal workers and get those asylum cases done much more quickly.
All right. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
North Carolina's economy is growing, bringing new businesses and opportunities. The need for electricity is growing too. At Duke Energy, we're meeting the challenge, providing even more electricity that's cleaner, reliable, and that stays affordable. We're getting out of coal and reinvesting in our communities with a diverse, balanced mix of energy sources and making targeted upgrades to the grid so that North Carolina can thrive in a smarter energy future.
You know, it's hard to believe the Safe Sober program has been going strong for over 30 years.
And over 600,000 students have made the pledge to stay safe and sober on prom night. You know, Griff, it's had a huge impact on our community.
Yeah, you're right, David. And now we're making sure the message continues year-round.
So everyone can join us in supporting our students.
Learn more and take the pledge at safesober.com, sponsored by Daggett Schuler.
Back now in the special voter education edition of Triad Today with our very special guest, Kathy Manning. Let's pick back up with Foreign Affairs for just a second. You serve on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. What's your role in that committee, and what's the biggest threat to American security right now?
I am the vice-ranking member on that committee, and I also serve on the Middle East Subcommittee and the International Organization Subcommittee. I can tell you that we are seeing a huge threat against democracy and against the free world. We are really in a battle, those who value democracy and freedom against those countries that are autocratic or run by terrorists who are out to destroy the world's law-based order. And we see that in Putin's horrific invasion of Ukraine. Right. We see it in the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel. We see it with Iran, that is now providing weapons to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to the Russians, and is the largest state sponsor of terrorism around the world.
Let's talk about veterans for just a second. You supported the PACT Act, so let's remind people what that is and how it helps veterans.
The PACT Act was passed in the last Congress to make sure that veterans who were suffering from illnesses caused by their exposure to toxic burn pits could finally get the care they need. When I was first on the campaign trail, I met with a couple of veterans who told me about terrible illnesses they had that they attributed to their exposure to toxic burn pits. I looked into it, and they were right. And the PACT Act has finally expanded the opportunity for veterans like those two gentlemen I met to get the care they need and they deserve.
Sort of fresh in everybody's mind, changing subject, is the accident with the bridge right outside the port of Baltimore. Now, truly, we know that a tanker who maybe wasn't going by the best safety checks and whatever ran into it. But now it comes out that there's a huge percentage of bridges in this country that really need upgrading.
We have not invested appropriately in our nation's infrastructure for many, many years. The last administration talked about Infrastructure Week so often it became a joke. But in our last Congress, with Joe Biden at the lead, we finally passed the infrastructure law. It was passed on a bipartisan basis. It's the largest investment in this country's infrastructure since the 1950s, when the highway system was built. We need to be investing in our bridges, in our roads, in our waterways, in our electrical grid, and we are doing that. North Carolina alone got, I think, more than $9.5 billion in funds for infrastructure. So the work is underway, but as that bridge collapse showed, we just can't do it fast enough to make up for all the way we have not cared for our infrastructure over the last 50 years.
Right, and there are ways, I'm not an engineer, of course, but there are ways that these things can be designed and upgraded so that if something like that happens, it can withstand, especially because it wasn't going that fast, but it had such volume hitting that, so people are concerned about that.
It was a terrible tragedy. And by the way, I read an interesting article today that talked about the people who were there working at night to fix those potholes. They were all immigrants. So let's not forget when we condemn immigrants out of pockets, they're there doing those tough jobs that nobody else wants to do.
In just a moment, we'll wrap up with Kathy Manning, and we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Jim Longworth, reminding you to catch my column Longworth at Large and Yes Weekly every week. It's available throughout the Triad, or you can go online, yesweekly.com.
Every cookie sold in the Girl Scout Cookie Program helps girls learn lifelong lessons in people skills, decision making, money management, goal setting, and business ethics. It's amazing how much you can learn from a cookie. The Girl Scout Cookie Program. Think outside the box.
Baby, watch me fly. Baby, watch me soar. Baby, watch me fly. I will open up the sky.
Fly local, fly easy, fly PTI.
Are you looking to jumpstart your future in the fast-paced, rapidly growing food and hospitality industry? In Second Harvest Food Bank's Providence Culinary and Hospitality programs, you will have the opportunity to do just that. From baking to barista training, an exciting future awaits you. Our programs have helped hundreds of individuals just like you excel in the workplace. There's no reason to wait to turn your passion for food and service into an exciting career. Check out the upcoming class schedule on our website at providencews.org/learn.
The world's brightest are Fulbrights, Goldwaters, McNairs, and Spartans. Prestigious doesn't have to be expensive.
And we know you will make a difference wherever you go.
UNCG. Find your way here.
Wrapping up now on our special voter education edition of Triad Today with Kathy Manning. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but just think back to January 6th, the day of the insurrection. You were there. What was going through your mind, and what have we learned, if anything, from it?
It was just startling to me on my third day of Congress when the Capitol Police burst into the House chamber and told us that the Capitol had been breached, tear gas had been released, that we should get out our gas masks and prepare to take cover. And I was in the last group that was caught in the House gallery. We literally had to run across the gallery, get down flat on the floor, and they told us to take off our member pins because all those people who were there, they were after us. They were trying to stop the peaceful transfer of power. Right. And let me just say, anybody who thinks those were just tourists, they were not just tourists.
Trump said they're patriots.
They were there. Well, 5 people died in that attack, and they were Capitol Police. So this needs to be taken very seriously. They were not patriots, and they are certainly not hostages in the prison. These are people who broke the law, who are violent insurrectionists, and there was a real threat, not just to the people in the Capitol, but to our democracy that day.
Yeah, and without being overly dramatic, I mean, you came very close to experiencing violence personally, you and Nancy, a lot of people in there. I mean, it was that close if they had breached it. All right, let's go on a positive note. Despite all the vitriol and everything, looking back on your 2 terms, what have you enjoyed about working up there?
It has been such a privilege and an honor to get to represent the people of this district. I've worked really hard to get out all across the district and meet with all kinds of different people, from farmers to healthcare workers to manufacturing, people working in manufacturing facilities, educators, small business owners, big businesses, to try to understand what are the needs of this district. And then I've gone back up to Washington and I've fought for the things that will help everybody build a better future. And I've done it both in the legislation that we were able to pass, really historic legislation we passed under President Biden in the last term. And I've also fought for community funding grants. We had the opportunity to submit project proposals. And I'm proud to say that I think we have gotten more than my fellow North Carolina Democrats in funding to bring back to this district.
Absolutely.
All 3 times. I know for certain this term, not that we're competitive, but we have great people in this district. They submitted extraordinary projects that will help us in everything from healthcare and education and building back our manufacturing sector and environmental remediation and our greenways. And the funding we've brought back will make a difference for this community.
Very quickly, I know you're going to stay in the area. So what will you be up to?
Well, yes, this is my home. I love this area, and that's why I wanted to represent it. What I'm focusing on right now is working as hard as I can. I'm still being paid to be the congresswoman for this district.
That's right.
And I work with the greatest team you can imagine. One of my regrets will be not being able to continue to work with this extraordinary staff I have. I love the people I work with. We're going to keep working as hard as we can until they drag me out of that office in December.
Well, I mean, you're still young enough. You might be able to call the staff back into action if we can, get some court challenge to this stupid gerrymandering thing. But I appreciate all you've done for the district. It's just been remarkable, and I hope you won't be a stranger to Triad Today in the future either.
Happy to come back. Thanks for having me.
I want to, before I get away from the folks here, I just want to mention that we want to thank the good folks at Triad Federal Credit Union again, Todd Hall and Atticus Simpson, for helping to make this show possible. Triad Federal Credit Union, check that out on the website. And you can go to manning.house.gov for more information about what's going on up in Washington. Kathy Manning, thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
I'll see you next week.